Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit the virtual booth from the main agenda page, which includes complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of this session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our speaker, Christopher Hollinger, Chief Financial Officer at Rethink Food NYC. We're excited to have Christopher with us for a keynote titled Leadership in Finance, Achieve Finance Goals and Maximize Efficiency. Welcome, Chris, and over to you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk to you about this very important topic, leadership in finance, achieving your finance goals and maximizing efficiency. I'm going to start by just talking through an introduction, talk a little bit about myself, my finance journey, talk a little bit about how you would map your personal finance journey as well as your organizational finance journey, and then the importance of leadership in finance. Then leave some time for Q&A at the end. I would love to have your questions. So first, me. I'm currently the CFO here at Rethink Food. Some of my past experience, I've been at part of the CFO's office at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, originally with Merrill Lynch, and then was there due to acquisition by Bank of America. I've spent time managing director at Blackwell Hollinger and Company, a CFO consulting firm that myself and a partner made or founded. I'm originally from a small town in Alabama, the University of Alabama. And for undergrad, tough loss this past weekend for all the college football fans out there. And then I went to Vanderbilt for my MBA. And a little bit about my journey from small town in Alabama to CFO here in New York for Rethink Food. When I was growing up, I remember grew up in a very small town, Monroeville. If you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, that's where it is. My uncle would come and bring he would come and bring the Wall Street Journal, and I would love to read it. And that was my first introduction to the world of finance and business. I went to the University of Alabama and knew that I wanted to major and work in business in some area, but I really didn't know which area I really wanted to be in. I was fortunate to work with Leonard Zampano, who was at the time was the chair of the real estate and finance department, and he really gave me my introduction to finance, just how powerful it is in the world of business and the key roles and different positions you can take within finance. Started a lifelong love of finance. Like I said, I started out as a bank examiner. I spent some time in consulting, worked at Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, but I always knew I wanted to be a CFO. So all through that time, I always made sure I got exposure to the different aspects of CFO. Clearly accounting, you have to have a very strong background in accounting to work in any area of finance. Being able to learn FP&A, getting a lot of exposure in that area. Controllership, I was a controller for several divisions in Merrill Lynch, then Bank of America, Treasury. So just really understanding how all those aspects play into a corporation and making a corporation be successful. A little bit about Rethink Food. We are a nonprofit based here in New York City. Our mission is to create a more sustainable and equitable food system. And we do that in historically two primary ways. We will give grants or we'll give funding to restaurants. Restaurants will then make meals. Those meals distributed to community service organizations, which they will distribute that food to people who are experiencing food insecurity. We also have a fleet of trucks here in New York City that will pick up excess food from corporate cafeterias, supermarkets, take that food to our commissary kitchen where we would then make meals that are then distributed to people who are experiencing food insecurity. We noticed that a lot of food is wasted. Up to 40% of our food is thrown away. And so we really want to take that, take a lot of that food that's normally would be wasted. There are a lot of people who are struggling with having enough food. And so just kind of bridging the gap between the wasted food and making it more viable for communities. This year, and I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail about the third aspect of what we're doing, because it really speaks a lot to how I've been building out our finance function here to maximize efficiency and to be really responsive to the needs of the organization. A third area that we focus on is, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the asylum seeker situation here, particularly in New York City. So we have a contract where we provide the food for several of the sites, hotel sites, and so we provide 3 meals a day to the asylum seekers. And it's a contract that we have with the city. And I'll talk a little bit about how we've kind of had to revise and revamp some of our processes and procedures in our finance organization to ensure that we will be able to exercise and to be able to really support that third pillar of our organization in a very successful way. Now, what is a finance journey and why is it important to the organization? Organizations go through life cycles. I'm sure a lot of you work with different size organizations, and so you kind of understand the organizational life cycle. But just kind of want to talk through how the life cycle organization really does play, how does it impact the type of finance function that you really want to have. So when the organization is generally started, in that beginning stage, very young, the life cycle organization, you go from 0 to 100,000, 500,000, $1 million. Generally, you'll have a very rudimentary finance organization. You'll generally have a bookkeeper. That person will help clearly do a lot of accounting functions, ensure that you have good AP in place, you have good AR in place, you ensure that bills are paid on time. Everything, and then of course, generally as you move up, you definitely want to have financial reports that are produced on a regular basis. When I started at Rethink, we were a very small organization. We were about a $1.5 million organization. We had a bookkeeper, and we had an outsourced accounting company that did our our monthly, quarterly, annual financial reporting, and also a very basic budgeting process, generally more top down, i.e., our CEO, our board of directors would meet. They would come up with the budget, and then they would push that down to the organization. So this was up until 2019. During 2020, our organization grew pretty significantly. We ended the year raising over $37 million. By the middle of the year, we had raised close to 20 million, and the board of directors understood that they needed a much more professional, organized finance function. And so that's when they needed me. I joined. And so from there, kind of get into that next middle stage of the organization and its finance journey. We went from, like I said, more top-down budgeting to really put into place zero-based, bottom-up budgeting process where we engage the department heads, because generally people are managers, I found, or I believe, are generally more responsive, better stewards of the financial resources of the organization when they have more say and belief and understanding of what they're doing. And so we engage the department heads to help build the budget. We also put in place we put in place our first level of financial forecasting, cash flow forecasting, which generally at the middle tier, in the beginning, cash is important, but as you get to be a middle-sized company, cash generally is, cash is the lifeblood of the organization. And then as we became a much more complex organization, we put in place a data analytics department. So now we have a data analytics department, and we really use a lot of that data to manage our business. We have dashboards that our data analytics team has built to give us insight in where our money is invested, the restaurants, what kind of results they have. We also added a couple of additional revenue line items. One is we have a sustainability service where, in addition to just picking up food from corporate cafeterias and other places, we now charge a nominal fee. Our data analytics team will build a customized dashboard to give information to that client to show, how much food they diverted from landfills, how that equates to CO2 to save, how that equates to water to save, and that's of course information that they can put into their ESG reports to show that they're good corporate citizens. So as the finance organization develops, the finance organization plays a much bigger part in so many other aspects of an organization. I'm sure a lot of your organization's finance function will play a key part in the sales team, helping them not only to have intelligence that they need to go and they're talking to potential clients, but also being able to do certain reporting on the outcomes that the customers want to see, and metrics in that regard. Generally, in most organizations, the finance department does own the data analytics and data. In addition to that, I also manage the technology team, so we've built a much more robust technology organization as our organization has grown. And that's another part of why it's important that finance plays a critical part of every aspect of the organization. Historically, finance was always thought of as the accounting, record keeping, compliance. But as we move forward, and particularly as organizations get more complex, the finance department plays a much more broader role across the organization, particularly from a strategic standpoint, helping to guide the organization ways of being successful. So as you think about the key components, you want to define what are your goals in your finance journey. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to build for your organization? You want to think about the evolution towards, kind of how you're becoming a true strategic partner in the organization. In addition to finance, data analytics, technology, I also run our strategy team, which we built here at the organization. And our strategy team really plays a key part in being a strategic partner and helping the organization to think about where we really want to go. So as the organization becomes more complex, finance definitely needs to and it has to play a bigger part. And then how do you really go about measuring success? For us, we use an OKR framework. So objectives, key results. So as part of our strategic planning process, which generally starts now, it works in dovetail with our budget process. So we engage with our senior leadership team and start to think about what are our strategic objectives for the upcoming year from an organizational standpoint. So first we develop, what are our organizational key objectives from a strategic standpoint. And just to give some insight into kind of this year, one of our biggest one was how do we diversify our revenue? As a nonprofit, historically, a lot of our revenues come from donors. And in our case, a lot of our revenues have come from a very concentrated group of donors, somewhere to the point of 70%. It's great in good years as long as they're continue to give, and we do have very generous donors. But it's dangerous to have revenue concentration regardless of what your business is. And so one of our key objectives for this year was how do we diversify our revenue base? We've been doing that. We've initiated several things. One, we've been engaging our restaurant partners to fundraise on our behalf. So we've had some success in some of the restaurants in Miami, for example, where they'll add a surcharge to their checks, and they would then donate that money to us, which we'll use for our programs. And then, as I alluded to earlier, we have our sustainability service where we have corporations pay us a nominal fee. We'll pick up their excess food. We'll turn that excess food into meals, and then we'll give them analytics that they can use in their ESG. So that's one of our objectives. We have several others. You don't want to have too many, 3 or 4, I think. Then for us, we have KRs. So our KRs, how do we, what are the key results that we want to have that we can measure in each of those objectives. Because if you don't measure what you're trying to do, how do you really know that you are having success? I've talked a lot about our finance journey, how we have gone from a bookkeeper, outsourced accounting a firm working to now we have in-house accounting department, built out our data analytics team, taking over technology. Technology, like I said, is now part of finance because it's so integral to the organization. And generally, from my experience, most organizations, a lot of functions will indeed report to finance or be a part of the finance department because finance, every part of the organization has to be financed in order to be successful. And then the strategy team, like I said, which was founded and started because helping be a part of the strategic journey and being a strategic partner to the CEO and the rest of the organization is very, very important. And I alluded to our budget process, but also as part of our budget process, we then, like I said, first we have our strategic planning process where we look at what are our objectives, what are our key results, and then we'll build the budget around because, depending on what we're really trying to do, we have a sense of how we need to fund that. Where are our funding coming? We anticipate it coming from based off of our objectives, what we're trying to do. And that's how we'll build the two in concert to be able to move forward and measure success and be successful. So how has leadership in finance shaped rethink food success? I think by incorporating all the components I've talked about, really have given one, ownership to department heads where they are much more invested in the success of the organization because they have more ownership of their finances. They're better stewards of the assets of the organization. And I think that's very important. Self-awareness as a leader. I think it's very important as a leader to be self-aware of what are your strengths, your weaknesses, and then what are the strengths and weaknesses of your team. Because, as a leader in the finance department, and then as finance being a leader within the organization, you have to be able to, be aware of yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, be able to use those strengths and weaknesses to, one, make a better finance department, but then also from having a better, more well-developed finance department, being able then to be that strategic partner for the rest of the business and helping to lead the rest of the business in where it really wants to go. I noticed that we have a couple of questions. One of the questions, which I kind of want to talk through, is what role does AI play within finance these days, and how does this impact trading method? I think that AI will play a very important role because we're talking about strengths, looking at your team, strengths and weaknesses. I think that or at least from my experience, people really want to do rewarding work that is mentally and mentally stimulating, mentally challenging. And historically, a lot of work within finance / accounting department has been very manual, repetitive, ticketing time, things that don't really provide a lot of mental stimulation for particularly people early in their career. And so I think that AI will play a very important role in helping to automate a lot of tasks that historically have been more manual. And I'm a big fan, and I really have been trying to, as build out our finance organization, incorporate technology, and AI to me is just the latest, one of the latest technologies, and how those will help to automate processes that historically have been more manual and allow people to have more time to either, one, be a strategic partner to the business, helping them to understand the analysis and the information that we provide. The finance department clearly provides a lot of information from a finance standpoint, a lot of data, but technology can help, like I said, automate a lot of that so that you don't spend as much time putting the reports and the information together, and you can spend more time actually analyzing, sitting with the leadership team, sitting with management, sitting with the department heads, and having a really good, robust conversation and helping them to understand how that information will help them to be able to manage their business better. Another question, how do you find out what motivates your team and how often are you meeting with them? So I have 5 direct reports, and I meet with all of them once a week, just for 15 to 20 minutes. And generally try to have like it's not overly formal, but an agenda or things that we really want to talk about. One for work standpoint, but both my parents were educators, and so mentoring is very important to me. So actually, during that time, I want to spend more time to talk about how can I help them to grow, how can I help them to learn, what do they really like to make their career better. And then the full finance team, we meet on Mondays to plan out the week. So we'll, generally that's where it's much more formal. Have an agenda, we'll keep notes. We have certain things to act on. So I'm a big fan of face-to-face meetings, and so we're in 4 days a week. So I really like to be able to also manage by walking around and just engaging people. I think it really helps, particularly people who are young in their career. One of the questions, what qualities does a successful and efficient finance leader possess? I think that, self-awareness is critical because you really need to have a good assessment of where your strengths are, being able to focus on your strengths. And then, where you aren't as strong, weaknesses, you can build or add people on your team, complement you, and help to offset some of those areas that aren't as strong in. I think, also having empathy is very important because you really, finance people sometimes get to, I think, undue criticism of being cold. And so you really want to be caring, empathetic, because, it's people. And finance, you have to deal with almost everyone in the organization. So building good relationships, being empathetic, being able to communicate well is something also that's very important and critical. Being able to communicate what you're trying to say, being able to communicate in a lot of cases complex information, particularly from a finance standpoint. And at this point, I'll turn it back over for the rest of the questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for such an insightful presentation. As a reminder, audience members can still enter questions, and we'll go ahead and review some other questions that came through. Chris, how do you address concerns over job security, especially as AI and new technologies continue to take over?
Yeah, I'm a big history buff. I love to read history, and I can't remember. I was listening to a talk earlier. Someone was talking about AI technology, and they made the point that as we went from buggy whips to automobiles, all the buggy whip makers lost their jobs, but there were a lot of other jobs created. And so, I've always been a believer that when one thing is eliminated, there will be other opportunities. And one of the things I was talking about earlier is, particularly more value added, higher margin type work, as opposed to some of the drudgery and day-to-day accounting tasks, the things that you can automate easily that allows, your junior employees to have more potential face-to-face time with business leaders within the organization. Whereas in the past, they probably wouldn't have had that opportunity because they would have spent all of their time doing more manual tasks from an accounting standpoint. So I think it's an opportunity, and I think it's going to be an opportunity going forward.
Perfect. Thank you. And this question does tie into the same AI topic, but with the emergence of AI, where do you see the biggest changes to your financial journey?
Yeah, I think like once again, I think the biggest changes are going to be on areas that can be very easily automated. I was actually talking to a company recently, and one of the things that they're trying to build out is that, how I'm sure everyone's familiar with when you do something in Excel and then you have to transcribe it to let's say PowerPoint, how you have to tick and tie the numbers and everything. Well, they have an AI tool that will do that transfer and do all the tick and tie in an automated way, and it learns. And so it kind of frees up time. So once again, I think that the great opportunity is freeing up time and being able to do more valuable work.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. This next question or attendee is asking if you can talk about servant leadership at all, or what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I'm a big believer that leaders eat last. It's cliche, but I think it's very true. As a leader, you should be always look to how you can help others, particularly within the organization. Like I said, mentoring for important. So how do you help others to reach their full potential and not so much focus on yourself? And I think it's a much more rewarding when you serve others and you see, kind of how they grow and what the results of that, are their lives. I think it's much more rewarding than just taking, being so focused on yourself, your career, things like that.
Excellent. Thank you. It looks like we have time for a few more questions that came through. What recommendations can you make for CFOs to start preparing for next year in order to be successful and profitable in the new year?
Sure. I think that, one of the things I think you should always focus on, I was at a conference last year, and one of the best keynotes was, coming into this year, it's about cash management and inflation. And yes, inflation is moderating, but cash management is still key. And I started my career, I think I mentioned it, Ernst & Young. I was simply working in restructuring, and I can't stress how many times organizations have gotten in trouble by not properly managing their cash. So I think that next year, everyone talks about recession this year. It's really doesn't like we're going to have it, but I think next year is going to be challenging from an economic standpoint. Whether you want to talk about, inflation remains high, whether you talk about credit remaining tight, and so I think that all CFOs have to really focus on cash management more so than now historically.
Great, thank you. And this next question asks, should a person seek one good mentor or should they seek out multiple mentors?
I think that, for me, I think that different people give different perspectives. And so, I think it probably does you well to search out and have relationships with as many good mentors as you have. Because, and also, certain mentors have expertise in some areas and not so much expertise in other areas. And you can learn different things, and you need to learn different things in order to be successful. I like to think a lot that, accounting, and it's not this direct, but, accounting to a certain degree is backwards looking, where finance is more forward. And so, but it's critical as a CFO to have, good understanding of both of those, backwards looking forecasting, budgeting, backwards looking financial reporting. And so having people who are experts in both of those areas, I think, will serve you well.
Great, thank you, Chris. And it looks like we have time to squeeze in one last question. How do you motivate employees who simply want to work remote rather than come into the office? And do you mandate that employees come in a certain number of days for more of that hybrid culture?
Sure. So our official policy, if you want to call it that, is that we're in the office 4 days a week. Fridays are flex day, but we are flexible if people want to work certain periods other places, and we do accommodate people that for special circumstances have to work 4 days at home. For example, I mentioned I'm from Alabama, and I'm actually going to Alabama next week, and I'll be working from Alabama. So I'll be working from Alabama. But so I'll be there all week. But I think it really depends on what is the culture of your organization. For us, I alluded to it, but we have an office, but we also have a commissary kitchen. We have a trucking team, and our commissary people on our trucking team have to be, they can't work remote. They have to be in person And so we decided early on from an equity standpoint that, it was unequitable that, our office, that our field people had to be, on site all the time, and our office staff, you know, clearly can have more flexibility, but in solidarity, and for that, as well as other reasons, one, we do want to have a certain culture. Most of our people do come from hospitality restaurants because we work in restaurants, and hospitality restaurants, people are together, and it helps to build camaraderie. It helps to build, a certain culture and vibe. So that's the other aspect that we really want to have. It's very important. And then, if I can get one more thing, and the third thing is, I came up through banking. And banking is sort of places that kind of, in my opinion, apprenticeship business. You learn by being next to your MD. You learn by being next to your VP. And it's not impossible, but I think it's harder to the unplanned interactions have a lot of value, particularly for people earlier.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Chris, for such an incredible keynote presentation. I also want to thank everyone who joined us today for this session. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event.